There are beautiful questions that are in front of me. And I must say that I must congratulate the person who is framing these questions, because they are very thoughtful and very useful, not only for me, but many in the Archdiocese. The first question is, how often should we go for confession? Most of the parishes inform about confession only twice during the calendar year. That is, the Advent season and the Lenten season. Why? The priest should announce all throughout the year for parishioners to make a good confession. The third question is much more interesting. It's about the children. Many children, after receiving the first Holy Communion, which is considered such a glorious day, they are dressed like brides and princes and princesses. But then they do not make it a point to go to confession after that. How to make them to go for confession at least once a month? And it is while they receive confirmation, the whole process of making a good confession is taught to them again. Very sad to know that they do not know the act of contrition. There's another small question also. If the Archdiocese can have what we call a separate Mass for the children in each parish, and make sure that they go for confession before or after Mass. That's a beautiful suggestion. Let me just go to the first question. How often should we go for confession? That's an interesting question. Why do we need to go for confession? When a person has sinned, he knows that he's not worthy. He needs to be cleansed. He needs to be fortified. He needs to go for confession. So I would not say how many times you have to go for confession. As often as you feel weak, as often as you have committed a sin. Don't give the devil a chance to glory in your sin and in your guilt. Go and unburden yourself to the Lord in the form of confession, and therefore you can go as many times for confession, as many times as you feel weak and threatened by the devil. You know, there are some saints who went for confession every day. Every day. I am told Dominic Savio, a young saint, he liked to go for confession every day. Meaning to say, he wanted to be prepared and always pure and chaste and worthy before God. That was his intention. So therefore, you go for confession as often as you feel that perhaps you have committed a mortal sin. You know what's a mortal sin? When you break the 10 commandments of God and the 5 commandments of the church, it's called a mortal sin. Or perhaps it's a venial sin that also is troubling you, because these venial sins put together lead you sometimes to the mortal sin. So therefore, go to confession as often as you can, especially when you are weak, when you feel yourself guilty, or perhaps not prepared to meet God face to face. The second question regarding our parishes and parish priests. Most of the parishes inform about confession only twice during the calendar year, that's Advent and Lenten season. Why? The priest should announce more often confessions so that people can go. I am very much in agreement with you. You know, this spring cleaning, or what we call the dry cleaning, need not be done only twice a year. How if I were to say to you wash your clothes only twice a year, on perhaps in month of June and month of December, you would say what type of advice is the bishop giving us? Same thing. Confession, our parish priests first of all have to give many more occasions, arrange perhaps priest before the Mass, after the Mass. There are some parishes who have special day announced so that people can come in big numbers, and at the same time the priests from outside also can be called. I would very much subscribe to this idea that our parish priests take upon themselves this sort of a good practice of having more and more confessions in the parishes, and more often also, so that the people have a chance to be at peace with God. The third one is very interesting, I said, because children. You know, the children have a very tender conscience. Many children After receiving their first Holy Communion, do not make it a point to go for confession. Very, very true. I have seen in some parishes, even that first confession has not been prepared well, done well, and it's just a sort of an excuse or perhaps a small ritual that people go through. And so many of children have lost the sense of confession, asking God for mercy and compassion. And I think this is very serious. As I said, the children's conscience is very, very tender. And for them, sin is not only big things, even perhaps not helping another person, telling a small lie, it pricks them immediately. And they say confession is the barometer of the conscience. Just as we see when we have fever, you want to see the barometer, with what's the level of your fever, so also the confession. And so when the children are prepared by their parents, perhaps once in a month or once in a fortnight, child, please go for confession. You have to pray before God. You have to ask God for mercy. And the child meets Jesus, the Savior, the Forgiver, the compassionate God in confession, and surely the children will be better prepared in their bigger life. You can imagine children going through their childhood age without confession. It's like a heart that becomes stony and hard. In the beginning, as I said, small sins seem to be grave things for them. But once they have gone through these things without any confession, they can even perhaps say that we don't need confession. I don't need confession. And the heart becomes hard. And therefore, I would be very happy if this suggestion is taken up, that the following question, which says that perhaps a children's masses can be arranged in the parishes, a separate mass for the children, because the children along with the adults, of course the obligation is fulfilled, but the way that we can communicate with the children at the children's mass, by involving them, by sing songs, by certain gestures, by certain symbols, by certain messages which the parish priest conveys very dearly to the people, to the children. And the suggestion has been given, perhaps at the children's mass, before the mass and after the mass, the children may be asked to go for confession, so that this becomes a practice in the parish, in the church. I am very much for it, and I hope this suggestion will be taken up by our parish priest. I wish you a very happy Sunday and a week ahead. God bless you.